Please can have your seat. I would just like to say thank you very much, Pastor Koju, for inviting me. Thank you for the entire thoughts right around the platform and the impact that the platform has continued to have. It's difficult to talk about my learning experience without talking about the impact that Pastor Koju has had on me personally. So I'm quite happy to be part of this, and I'd like to wish Nigeria a very, very happy anniversary. Today I will be sharing some thoughts around citizens' participation for national development. And sorry, I just want to solve a few problems. Okay. Okay. And basically, one of the things we need to be talking about today is basically the cultivation of citizens' partnership as we move on in the development of our nation. And it's very possible that sometimes we forget the role that the citizen plays in the development of nations. We believe that our nation is developed largely by different kinds of resources that we have, and we do not pay attention to the human resource that converts all of these resources into value for Nigeria. Nigeria has huge potentials to become a very global powerhouse. It has natural endowments, the largest oil producer in Africa, second largest in crude oil production, in terms of reserves, in Africa, and the 9th largest proven gas reserve in the world. And one would have thought that all of these natural endowments will place us in the same position where we are as per natural endowment in the Committee of Nations as we develop. But on the other side, we find out that we have a very young and diverse growing population, over 200 million people, 7th most populous country in the world. 65% of the population are less than 25 years old. And I think that is the biggest value proposition that we have in the world. So if we see that we are 61 years and counting, 22 years of uninterrupted democracy, it is something to really be proud about. But the challenge all the time will be, how do we convert all of this into value for Nigeria? And if you look through countries that have started with similar positions like us, you will see that if we look at South Korea, we look at Singapore, you will see that from 1990 up to date, Singapore has grown its GDP per capita at almost ×5. If you look at South Korea, you see that South Korea has also grown by ×5 within that period. And then Nigeria has only grown by ×2. And it's important to know what is actually driving this growth. So if we look at the next slide and try to take a study at Singapore a little bit more, you will see that Singapore itself, starting in 1965, was a small market with very high levels of unemployment. 70% of its household lived in overcrowded conditions like slums, and 50% of the population were illiterate. Fast forward to 2021, you will find that they are now fourth highest per capita GDP in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. They are the world's second busiest port and one of the busiest airports in the world, ranked number 7 in a row, 7-year row globally. Now, when you say they are the busiest port, clearly if you given their population, you know that they are not just serving Singapore, because they basically position themselves in Asia to open up the Asian market and become a hub. They are the leading financial center in Asia and hub for various kinds of foreign trade and investment. And then let's look at South Korea. South Korea, before 1960, was the poorest country in the world following the war, with a per capita GDP of 79. And at that time, you could actually say their per capita GDP was 79 naira. Right? So it's not at today's exchange rate. It was an agrarian economy that depended very heavily on foreign aid. Unskilled, semi-skilled population with no education at all, only about 22% literacy. So not too far. In fact, I think we were further than they were in the 60s. But when you fast forward, you find out that South Korea currently is the 4th largest economy in Asia, one of the most diversified economy, and have moved it through industrialization, modern technology, and an export-led economy. It's ranked the most innovative country in the world regarding technology, and is known to have the fastest internet speed and quality. But you'll find that one thing that is common to all of them in terms of their development is the fact that their participation and what they do in terms of e-participation. And what is e-participation? It actually measures the provision of information by government to citizens, interaction with stakeholders, and engagement in decision making. In other words, citizens' participation was at the heart of their economy. And it's important that we really take that into consideration, because when we look generally at what we represent as a country, one of the things you find is that we tend to forget the role, really, that the citizen plays in governance. And that role is very, very germane. We see that we neglect what people are. We do not pay the kind of regard we need to pay to our citizens. And that presents a very big challenge to us. And when you look at it very critically, you find out that there are certain assumptions and certain myths that actually stand against this belief. I call them fallacy, and there are several, but I will mention just a few. 3 of those fallacies I would like to talk about is the fallacy around tribalism. It is the idea that your tribe or people that belongs to your kin and kinfolk, if you put them around you, it will aid you in succeeding. And that is a big fallacy. And I will show that a bit. The second thing you find is the lack of transparency and accountability. And it comes from the idea that when you are transparent and accountable, you expose yourself as government to your enemies. In other words, your enemies are likely to pick up things around you, and they are going to attack you for the purpose of transparency. This is also a fallacy, because it assumes that you have more enemies in the nation for you than you have those people that are on your side. And in fact, it assumes that the population is not particularly interested in development, but they are interested basically in attacking you as a government. And so you then pursue a strategy of lack of transparency and accountability. The third fallacy is that government knows best. It's an attitude. And one of the speakers called it a proud attitude of government. In other words, it's the idea that the citizens are dull, they are not intelligent, they cannot articulate, and therefore you do not include them in decision making. What that means is that if they come into the decision making, they are more likely to spoil your plans. They are more likely to redirect your plans into a direction that you did not plan for. Let's look a little bit at tribalism. And you will find that we've had, let's just give an example of 3 presidents which we've had. Olusegun Obasanjo from Ogun State, Western Region. Goodluck Jonathan from Bayelsa State, Southern Region. And we currently have Buhari from Katsina State, Northern Region. And they've done several things for Nigeria, right? But one claim you cannot really hold is that their respective regions have benefited in a differential way from the rest of Nigeria from their being president. And the truth is that once you come into a position of authority or into a position of what I would call responsibility, really your tribe no longer kicks in. I do not think that the Minister of Labor is currently thinking about what is happening in Anambra. He's concerned about labor issues of national proportions. And so that's why it's a fallacy to think that tribe plays a significant role in your success, in your security. And in my book on relationships and value proposition, one of the things that is clear is that relationships are value-driven. And it is the value or the production that you bring to the table that forces your role in that relationship. And therefore, by continually protecting issues around tribe, we miss out in the very important other issues that lead to national development. I'll give myself as an example. I was born in Delta State. I schooled in Edo State. I did my NYC in Kaduna. And I built my career in Lagos. And the truth is that I'm connected to those cities. You know, every time I think of Kaduna, and I served in the Defense Academy, I remember the graduating course marching out in their passing out parade. It was a very emotional moment, you know, as they passed out and sang the song, "God be with you till we meet again." And you could see these young officers. Their tribe was not what they were talking about. They were talking about the measurable commitment they were making for Nigeria. They were talking about that they were going to stake themselves, and they were only known by the class that they were representing, and they were coming from all kinds of tribes. Today, when I drive through Benin and I see the red soil of Benin City, I connect to it because a part of my life was there, right? And I work in Lagos, so I'm emotionally also connected to Lagos. So it means that it is really not about your tribe. And that's one reason why a lot of people are excluded from governance, because somehow there's a belief that your tribe and your kinsmen help you go further in life. For me, it has not been like that, given how I have traversed my own life's experience. The second thing is transparency. The truth is that when you look at the largest companies in the world, you see that they are public liability companies. And in public liability companies, you find out that significant amount of disclosures are required. So transparency has to be there. In fact, when a public limited liability makes a promise, and it appears that circumstances mean that that promise may not happen, they come out again to tell the public that that promise, that target, I may not meet. And yet, they are the largest corporations in the world. They are the companies I'm showing to you. A lot of them are over $1 trillion company. In other words, transparent and accountability basically spurs up transaction and influences behavior in a way that the outcome comes out better than worse. The next slide talks about participation as it has to do with voting and elections. So one other thing you will find is that it is easy for us to sit down and say, well, I want to win an election and that is my objective. My objective has nothing to do with national development. Because what you will see also is that when you look at Singapore and you look at South Korea, you see that their participation in their presidential elections certainly has an alignment with their development. Because it is citizens that are engaged that determine how those developments will go. For us in Nigeria, we are 35%. And one of the things we need to understand is that when you go out there to encourage people to vote, to register, to participate, it is beyond winning an election. It has to do with getting the citizens' commitment to the process. It has to do with national development. That is why Mr. Governor, the governor of Lagos State, did say, and I quote, "In providing leadership for Lagosians, I take it as a cardinal rule that the true power of the voter lies in continuous engagement with the government beyond the ballot box. As a governor, we will ensure an inclusive and consultative governance approach in my service to you." Now, it's important that if you are going to lead a people, you need to lead the people beyond the ballot box. And that's not certainly our experience now nationally. But it's our experience that we need to we need to change our culture to understand that working with the people, right, and working through with them through winning elections, through engaging them even while you govern, right, then shows, right, their participation and supports development and supports that growth. Another point of participation is when you begin to look at taxes. Paying taxes serves like the equity that the citizens have in their government. And many times, right, we look at taxes just purely from revenue generation. But it's important that we see that when you are talking about development, and again, you look through developed environment and you look at the tax to GDP ratio of developed countries and developing countries, you will find out that the more developed the countries are, you will see that there's more tax compliance than less tax compliance. So again, I'm not going after you for taxes just because you should pay, and that is good, it increases the revenue. And in any case, who are you? What stature do you have when your revenue is meaningless, right? But we should begin to look at taxes as leaders, that as we go out there to ask our people to pay their taxes, we are encouraging them to be part of something that is interesting, to show their commitment towards the state and to participate with government in that unique way. And there are different countries that we can look at that have jettisoned this tribalism thing, that has put to rest lack of transparency and the whole government attitude that does not include consultation. Let's look at United Arab Emirates, for example. Right? They have over 70 tribes, but they push ahead an agenda based on one Emirati principle. So the UAE enforces openness and tolerance as a core governance principle. In Singapore, they run the country like a business. And so there's a significant amount of transparency, and institutions run it. And that is why you can see a lot of development. When you go to South Korea is known even by the United Nations as a leading country in participatory governance. What that means is that you can then see how participation in governance actually forces national development to occur. So it is not the natural resource that you have. It is how the people participate with it. And when we talked earlier this morning, you see that in terms of development, if you focus on the people, then you will see the development occur, because they are the ones that will translate your natural resources into value. And even in countries where you do not see natural resources, right, you see them translating their brain power through various innovative positions that then result in national development. So for example, in the UAE, some of the key things they did was basically to institutionalize policies around tolerance. And tolerance is a very important thing, you know. When we talk about tolerance sometimes in Nigeria, we only talk about us tolerating while you still have the feeling of discrimination, right? Or marginalization. But what tolerance really means is that we remove, right, everything in our system that gives people the idea that they are being marginalized. Come very strongly with active promotion to show why marginalization really doesn't exist, right? And then create strong legal and institutional frameworks that protect especially the minority. I mean, recently you saw that the CBN governor came out to actually wield the big stick in protection of minority rights, right? So there's a general tendency that yes, the majority must bear rule. But the truth is that if the minority is not brought into inclusion, you just keep on having significant amounts of agitation. What did Singapore do? They aggressively pursue talent recruitment. And that's one other thing we can do. Because one of the things, when we say pursue recruitment of talent, it looks simple. But you see that it's not part of our fabric, so that our people, right, are engaged properly. What we find is that it appears that if you, instead of working quite hard to improve your proficiency and improve your capacity, there is some sense if instead you work towards changing your state of origin and maybe changing your surname. Maybe it might give you some employment quicker, right, in a public service. Maybe it might give you admission easier into higher institutions, and so on and so forth. Now, except we begin to protect talent, right, a bulk of the people who make the sacrifice, right, to be innovative and to be proficient at what they do will be excluded. And that is why you find out that if your most talented minds are excluded from your own national development, then you certainly will not see development at all. We need to encourage consistent training, and we talked about it earlier today, right? That the kind of training we give our people must connect to the needs that the economy is creating. And sometimes these trainings are not trainings that need to take 20 years for it to cycle out. Because sometimes when we think in terms of education, we think in terms of education as to starting in primary one and finishing out there in the university. But that is not the case. We've heard that 6 months training sometimes in the technology space can equip you to compete globally. There was an experiment which PwC was doing in Europe. At the end of the experiment, figured out that, listen, with just a high school training, there are a lot of things you can do, right, in the consulting space. Because basically, you need to learn a lot of those things again. As we built the strategy for Lagos, one of the questions that we asked the tech space, we asked the film industry, we asked them, if there's anything government should do for you, what would that be? And we actually thought they would say, we need you to make a lot of investment in that space. They said they just needed talent. And it can be frustrating, right, when you find out that there's a high level of employment and at the same time there's a high need of talent. So the question is, what deliberateness are we putting into the kind of training we give to our people that connects them with the work that they do, or the work that is arising from the environment? If we look again at what South Korea did in this regard, One of the things they did for citizens' participation is to implement an online citizen participation portal. And today, Lagos State is implementing what we call the Citizens Gate, right? And the idea is for people to be able to interact with government easily, putting the entire governance systems into a digitization process so that people can engage government. You ensure you enlarge what we call the space, the touch points between you and the citizens, so that that sense of belonging actually begins to trigger up what is required to be done. They also, in South Korea, implemented what they call participatory budgeting. Today in Lagos, there's no budget that comes out without having a consultative forum with the citizens of Lagos in all their divisions, with the various stakeholders, the market women, the technicians, the artisans. And we do that because we do not believe that 100% of knowledge is present in government. You cannot love the people the way you think they should be loved. You must love them the way they want to be loved. And if you feel that there's something wrong about the way they want to be loved, then it means that you need to train them to help them make that shift in their mind. Otherwise, you would take a position that is different from the people that did put you there. So there are several kinds of actions that can be taken to drive this partnership. For us, for me, I feel one of the biggest challenges we have is the whole idea about our state of origin. It confuses us, right? You are in Anambra State, but your state of origin is Benue. And in your mind, you immediately believe that you are excluded from participating in governance in Anambra State. And actually, that is how your life will proceed, right? Meanwhile, the truth, like we expressed, is that the kind of responsibility you carry and the place where you stay plays a bigger role in your commitment in that regard. We need to create effective public bureaucracies that establish mechanisms that attract and retain talent. You know, if it is talent that is required for national development, then you cannot discriminate against talent. So you need competitive compensations. You need things that acknowledge and guarantee the talents in your midst, irrespective of the tribe that they belong to. The third is to run government with a level of transparency that is world-class. And to believe, like he talked about experimentation, just believe, right? These companies that are biggest in the world, they were not destroyed because of transparency. They were built up because of transparency and accountability. And it is accountability that actually encourages enterprise to perform. And you will never know your capacity for performance except you open up yourself, right, to accountability and transparency. Right? If you are that king or that leader that is absolutely powerful, then certainly the absoluteness of your power will certainly lead to corruption, because absolute power really corrupts. So when you see leaders, leaders tend to commit themselves to a certain set of rules that make things work. Now, that is one of the things, you know, we asked David Cameron in an interview, and David Cameron said that governance is about the rule of law and taxes. Right? Again, when you look at the rule of law, you think just about catching the criminal. But the rule of law and your compliance to it is what tells us that you are willing to become part of the society. Therefore, policing goes beyond just enforcement, but it goes to encouraging compliance and recruiting people, right, to comply. It goes to preventing people from even going the wrong way. That's how you build nations. We also need to begin to propagate things around tolerance. And you see, Nigeria has not been a country without thoughts, right? Because you will find out that in Nigeria we started NYC, we started unity schools, right? And all of that really is to really move us in the direction where we will integrate. But somehow, even within those systems that we have created, we seem to also hide ideas that do not support our beliefs in this area. The people are strong people. The citizens are extremely strong. They are not as weak as we think. They are the ones that build the nation. The nation is not built by a government. It's built really by the city. It's the innovation that the citizen brings that unlocks significant capital. So let us look, for example, at the statistics around diaspora remittances. The diaspora remittances have outperformed in many ways our revenue from oil. It has outperformed it. And even in the heart of COVID, when our remittances for oil went as low as $3 billion, diaspora remittances held out at $17 billion. What it means is that the people are more resilient in the face of shock than the products you sell, because the people can adapt and create new things. And therefore, it is important that we support the people and support their participation and encourage them to flourish. The question we'll ask is that, why are we so focused on oil when indeed you can see that diaspora remittances are much higher? And these remittances are happening not in $100,000, they're happening in $200 and very granular forms, $1,000 to do things. They're even happening at a time where people might not be excited about Nigeria. But so what will it be if we encouraged the people in the diaspora to invest in Nigeria? In which case, they are not sending handouts into Nigeria, they are actually investing, and this number can actually double. It is the citizen actually putting their money in pension that allows us to have total asset under management in pension at 12 trillion. So the citizens are indeed quite powerful. In fact, what the government has is a small percentage of what the citizen pays in taxes. And therefore, we need to do what we need to do to encourage citizens' participation in every way that we can to make things go forward. Lagos State is proactively taking the lead in promoting national development through citizens' participation. Lagos State is the melting pot of culture in Nigeria and around the globe. People with over 300 tribes, 500 languages refer to Lagos as their home. They refer to themselves as Lagosians. And maybe Lagos is a place where we should look at experimentation, right? Maybe Lagos is that place where we should see possibilities, because Lagos actually carries the heart of the nation. It is the doorway with which the world approaches Nigeria, and it is the doorway with which Nigeria approaches the world, controlling over 70% of air traffic into Nigeria and shipping into Nigeria. Maybe Lagos is a place where we should try new things like community policing, for example, to see how it works, right? Maybe Lagos is that place where we should see what it can do, right, if more allocation of resources goes in there, or it retains much more of its resources, right? Maybe that is the place to try it. That is a very important concept and something that we need to pursue, right? Because if Lagos prospers, Nigeria will prosper. If the infrastructure in Lagos does very well, then 70% of all of those traffic will do well. And again, when we look at a place like Lagos, like we look at other strategic cities around Nigeria, we should stop looking at the geography. We should remember that Lagos, like most other places, Lagos has 300 tribes. All of these tribes are not indigenous to Lagos. And it's important that we begin to see ourselves in that light, so that as we engage our nation from everywhere, we should see a place like Lagos as a national asset. Not because of the geography, but because of your people there and what your people are doing. It is Lagos that invests in LASRI, for example, which is the Lagos State Science Research and Innovation Council, that tends to support startups. It's Lagos that is investing, for example, in a technology campus, right, in Yaba to support Lagos as a technology hub for Africa. And when they say that Lagos has gone ahead of Nairobi in the support of startups, it is Nigeria that actually benefits. When Lagos turns the airport road from a 4-way high lane to a 10-way high lane, and you land at Murtala Mohammed Airport and come into Lagos, it is actually a glory that goes to Nigeria. It's a glory that defies the thoughts of the tribes and tongues that are in Lagos. When they say that Nigeria has improved in its ease of doing business, it is because 80% of the weight of that evaluation is as a result of what's happening in Lagos. So if Lagos fails, you can imagine that the outcome of the ease of doing business rating will drop. And that affects the investment flow. So it's important that we begin to engage our citizens. It's important that we begin to engage the inclusion. It's important that we begin to know what the people do. So we pursue oil resources, for example. But I ask you, where are the skilled welders coming out of the Niger Delta? They are gone. In what environment can the people function? The environment is polluted. Right? So what is happening is that we are looking at the product oil, but we are forgetting preserving the environment, preserving the skills of our people for future development. When Lagos says we want to have no open grazing, it is not because it's not a tribe conversation, it's a beef conversation. Because you know that as we move into African Continental Free Trade Agreement, your beef will be competing with Australia, will be competing with beef out of South Africa. And therefore, the methods to grow beef has to change. It is the love that we have for our people is putting our people in a position to compete. It's not about the tribe. It's about beef business. And which is why you can remember what Prof said, that we should move it away from the politics and look at the economics of it and look at the business of it. If the cattle come stressed and sick, they will not be competitive in a bigger market. But you know, some of these ideas get very complicated when we mix it with tribe, right? It's like picking up a tribe because that tribe has a preponderance in it. And Lagos is a marketplace. Lagos has that national responsibility, right, to drive production nationally. And therefore, the kind of rules that happen in Lagos are rules that should support development nationally. Again, when I say Lagos, think about the people of Lagos. So if the people are not engaged to deliver the kind of outcomes that we are talking about, it will not work. It is the reason why when our Papa Port has a challenge, Lagos decides to ensure that it facilitates investment in the deep sea port, to expand the port capacity, to build a rigid pavement all the way to Egube to evacuate. Who benefits from that? It is a national development issue, and it is for the benefit of the whole of Nigeria. So it's important that we see exactly how these things run. It's important that we see what Lagos represents, but more importantly, how we engage, right, our citizens to be fruitful and to be productive. For Lagos to be what it is, it must attract talent. And that's a lesson also for Nigeria. In the Lagos cabinet, it's a truly diverse cabinet, right? You have people from Delta, in terms of origin, I'm from Delta. You have Architect Kabir from Katsina. You have Joe Egube from Anambra. You have several members of cabinet that are not even from Lagos. And that's what we're saying, that you cannot discriminate against talent and the citizen will not be excluded. But when you attract talent into the mix, then you are able to do many great things. And I'm sure that when I'm in cabinet, I'm not thinking of the problem of Edo State, even though I have an emotional attachment, I schooled there. Right? I'm thinking of the economic challenges of Lagos. Right? Engineer Joe Bokwe is not thinking of what the traffic situation is in Anambra. Right? He's thinking about how to ensure the drainages work in Lagos, and when the rains come, it is not flooded. So you find out that tribe, tongue, that is bereft of talent or competence does not support national development. And that partnership is important, because it's that partnership we drive when we try to begin to build the red line and the blue line railway. Because those partnerships work. You need to have partnership with your people. You need to have partnership with all the governments, right? And that partnership is what supports development. So when we are building the red line and we say it will move 500,000 people every day, right? And shorting the time, is because we decided to partner with the federal government. If the federal government, if we are in each other's throats, you will not have that rail. And if you do not have that rail, it's not the geography of Lagos that will suffer, it's the 300 tribes, those people that are in Lagos that will suffer. And so because you know the pain points in those places, right, you do the partnership that are required to actually develop the entire space. In summary, I would like to say that Nigeria is a great place. It's easy to recognize only the bad that is going on in Nigeria, but there's a lot of good. You might think that you are the only one fighting, but there are still 7,000 prophets that have not bowed to Baal. Right? The truth is that when Ms. Johnson came, she did tell us about the number of people doing great things. And many times we just keep on to it as we see the things come together. Nigeria is a strong country, and where we are going is the place without boundaries. So when we do 3,000 kilometers of broadband infrastructure, it's to liberate our youth and help them get expression in their innovative positioning. Right? That's what development is about. It's about the people. And it is the people, right, that will deliver to you the national development that you want. It's the people that will stimulate the investment flows that are required. It is not oil. You have seen that the diaspora alone delivers it. What other things can we do to expand this space? Let me give an example. If, for example, we did hear that less than 5% of landowners have title. So when you look at 95% of the properties around Nigeria is cash tied down. So if you build a system that touches the people in a way, right, you find out that that cash will be released. If you build systems around the people that allows them to invest together, in other words, practice unitization. So you don't have to build a house all by yourself if the return is what is important. You can come together and do things, right? If you create systems that guarantee that, then you see that the people thrive. If you create legal systems, dispute resolution mechanism, alternative justice systems, then you see that you begin to increase the touch point between you and the citizens. And what the citizens will do, you will not forget, because they will invest. I tell you, people talk about Nigeria when it comes to how we handled COVID. But Lagos was at the forefront of it. And sometimes when we talk about it, it looks like magic. But what actually happened in Lagos was that government was in position, right? Mr. Governor acted as incident commander to lead the charge. We intervened in the population, right? But the money that the government had alone was not enough, right? But the people of Lagos rose up also and intervened directly in their communities. And then they combined also with government and intervened. So you had 3 layers of interventions. And because of the attitude of partnership, even the federal government invested as well. So it is that kind of ecosystem that encourages collaboration and acknowledges the people. Today, Because of the belief that we have, right, we are launching what we call a volunteer corps, because we believe that the people of Lagos will sign in and participate and volunteer their skills, whether they are doctors, they will volunteer, because people's sense of worth sometimes come from volunteering. And that is the spirit that we are trying to drive in Nigeria. That is this agenda which we need to push to encourage the citizens to participate in every way. Because if just all you need is to win an election, then the less people that vote, the better for you, right? As long as they are your people, right? But if national development is what we seek, then we should take it as a strategic initiative to begin to build the register of voters, to begin to build those who participate in it, to begin to encourage people to comply to law and order, and so on and so forth. The future for Nigeria is very strong. It is not doomsday in Nigeria, right? Things will happen out of sequence because of the armies that are working underground. Those who you do not see, our innovators, those who are cerebral in their thinking, who are in love with Nigeria. They exist not only in Nigeria but outside Nigeria. When we hosted Egube in Lagos, we had over 10,000 people attending every day from 60 different countries. So you find out that the people interested in the development of Nigeria are not necessarily in Nigeria alone. So there are people in love of Nigeria. There are people in love of what we are doing. And there's a lot of good that we can cultivate. Thank you very much. God bless Nigeria. Happy Independence, Nigeria. Amen.